Hello, class. I wanted to give you a brief review on this video of process costing and also work out an example problem from your homework. And then hopefully you will spend time between now and Tuesday practicing these problems on your regular homework. So as a review, process costing is used by companies that have homogeneous or mass produce the same units over and over, even if they vary slightly, such as we discussed a manufacturer of soda or textbooks or markers, even, right? When they mass produce units, essentially each unit should cost about the same. So we use an average costing system called process costing. There are 5 steps in order to calculate the end goal of your cost per unit and your value in your work in process and your finished goods account. Now, part of that is also encompassing our process of allocating the overhead. Remember, in this chapter, your overhead is often lumped together with your direct labor. That is known as your conversion cost. So we're going to go through these steps in order to know our end goal of calculating the cost per unit, how much each unit cost us, and to give a total value cost in our ending work in process and our completed or finished goods account. So the first step is always to hone in on what your ending work in process and completed units are. I wanted to point out on the learning resources that there are 2 helpful documents. One is the homework notes. If you have not utilized that, you should look through that. That'll help you complete any homework questions, especially the ones with the journal entries. I've kind of typed out exactly what accounts you should use, and then some notes or formulas you may need for the other problems. Also, these documents where I have completed some example problems, your questions 4 through 6 and questions 11. In the homework, make sure whenever you're completing it that if there is a hint available that you use that. I'm going to work through an example of question 8. It does have a hint, but I just wanted to hone in on some key items for you to look at when you're calculating your numbers on your homework. So first off, when it asks you to calculate equivalent units of production, it is asking for equivalent units, please note, for 2 different values, one for materials and one for conversion. When we're calculating the equivalent units for materials, we want to always look at the ending percentages. So we're going to use that ending percentage. I'm going to highlight it. The other 2 values I need to know how many units were actually transferred out or completed, because those are equivalent to being done. And I need to know how many are still in my ending WIP. So these are the values I will use when I'm calculating equivalent units for materials. I will take the number of units that were in the ending WIP and I will multiply it by its ending percentage of completion. This one happens to be 100%. We talked about how you could have all your materials already in the process. And so 49,000 units multiplied by 100%, still 49,000. And then I'm going to add in all of the units that were actually completed, or they call them transferred, because they may move into another WIP account. This is still units. This is not dollar figures. So it looks like we have 318,600, I believe. I'll double check my math. Yes, 318,600 for materials. Conversion, it would be completed using the same numbers, except this time I have to use the conversions ending percentage of completion. You cannot store up labor and overhead, so that percentage of completion, you can't already have all of that in the process, otherwise they would be completed. That percentage of completion is 30%. Again, we're always going to hone in on the ending percentages of completion. So I'm going to take that 30%, it's going to get multiplied by these 49,000 units that are in our ending work in process. They're the same units, except they have more of the materials in them than they do labor and overhead. So then I'm still going to add all the completed units. I want to point out this amount in the ending work in process, the 49,000 multiplied by 30%, that 14,600, we're going to come back to that number. So make sure when you're doing your work, you either write those numbers down or you remember that that value is actually the equivalent units in our ending WIP. That's the equivalent units in our ending WIP for conversion. So I have to take that 14,700 though and add it with the 269,600, and then there's my total 284,300. Second part of the problem is going to ask you to calculate a cost per equivalent unit. So we're going to be using division, and we're going to still be using these two numbers as our part of our problem. Those are our denominators on the next calculation. I'm going to highlight this one in a little bit lighter because it's not easy to see in that. Let's go with gray on that. Not easy to see in that teal. So I'm going to calculate for May the total cost. So I have to add up the cost figures of material. Material cost equals the initial cost of materials. The stuff sitting in WIP at the beginning of the month was 55,600. I know that because of this key word here. It says materials, and I'm going to add that with the cost added for materials, so the additional cost I incurred when I was trying to make more units in materials. So I'm going to add these numbers together. It's going to be my numerator, and then I'm going to divide it by our equivalent units for materials. And 87,770, all divided by the 318,600. This number right up here that we used right here. I'm going to highlight it with my cursor there. So then I also want to pay attention to on the homework if it gives me any details about the rounding. $0.45 per unit material cost. Each unit is costing me 45 cents in materials. Conversion, we complete that math the same process. We're going to add up all the conversion costs. The beginning conversion cost was 16,100. And then my additional conversion cost for the month, $231,241. Then I'm going to divide all of that by the equivalent units for conversion. So we're going to take our 16,100, we're going to add it with $231,241. I'm going to divide all of that by 284,300 equivalent units. $0.87 per unit. I'm going to write that per equivalent unit. Step 3, once you have calculated the cost per equivalent unit, here's where it's actually a application, or what I like to refer to as apply. It says compute, but that word could also be referenced as apply. I'm going to take these cost per units and I'm going to multiply them. Right now you need to hone in on the fact that you are trying to calculate the cost of the ending work in process. Okay, so ending work in process is the key there to help you figure out what you're working on at this point. We're working on calculating the ending work in process. I'm going to highlight that in pink. The ending work in process has 49,000 units in it, right? But they are only equivalent to 49,000 units for material. So when I go to do the multiplication of the material cost, I'm going to take my material cost equals 45 cents per equivalent units. That will get multiplied by the number of equivalent units that are sitting in ending WIP. That happens to be 49,000 for materials because it is getting multiplied by 100%. So it's going to get multiplied by 49,000. I'm going to have that as part of my answer. I'm going to do that same process when I calculate the conversion cost. So for materials, it's 45 cents multiplied by 49,000 equivalent units, so $22,050. When I calculate conversion cost, though, this is the most often missed part of the problem. Per equivalent unit is not going to be multiplied by 49,000. It's going to get multiplied by 49,000 when it's multiplied when that's at 30%. So remember I said to keep this number somewhere. If you take in your calculator 49,000 and you multiply it by 30%, I believe it was 14,700. 14,700. That's what we're going to multiply the 87 cents by. So that will be the total conversion cost in the ending work in process. The total of these two values added up is my total cost in work in process. When I add 22,050 with the 12,789, $34,839. And then we're going to do that also for the finished units or the completed. So we're going to have material cost again getting allocated to all the units that are completed. Now this, I won't have a different amount that I am multiplying my cost by. All of the units that were completed, if you look up here, 269,600 is the value, choose that blue, for materials. It's also the value for conversion. So really those are all the same unit. So what I could do is I could add the 45 cents and the 87 cents together and just multiply that total figure. It's like $1.32 maybe to the 269,600 units. But I will do both math pieces here separately. So I'm going to multiply the 45 cents by the 269,600 units that are completed. This will be the material cost sitting in the finished goods account, 121,320. And then I'm going to do that for conversion. It will equal 87 cents per equivalent unit times 269 units. And then I'm going to add these two cost figures together. And then we can even check ourselves. We can check our work by seeing if all of these costs that we have allocated equal the cost that we started the process with. So 234,552. My total cost would then say in the completed account or finished goods. Those two values added together, 234,552 plus 121,320, 355,872. So the last step really is to check yourself. It's also known as a cost reconciliation. So if I am saying this is the total in my WIP, I'm going to highlight that one in purple, this pink, and this is the total in my completed. I'll do that in green. If I add those two values together, so total WIP equals 34,839. If I add it with the total completed cost of 355,872, we get $390,711. That figure should equal, so here's where our check figure comes in. I'm going to make it a little bit larger, all of the costs that we started with. So if we go back up to our problem and we add everything up here that has a dollar sign in front of it. So the initial cost of materials, the initial cost of conversion, which we remember is labor and overhead. If we add all of these values together, so 55,600 plus 16,100 plus 87,770 plus $231,241, that totals up to 390,711. And if we go back down on our total cost, it matches. So what that means is that I accounted for all of the costs that I started with and I added to the process. They ended up either in the WIP account, 34,839 of it did, or in the completed. So I know I didn't lose any of my cost figures anywhere. I allocated it all somewhere. That's called your cost reconciliation, and you will have to do that on a couple of the problems. So please email me if you have any questions, and I hope you stay warm.